Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cadet 3rd Class Jenna Spady. It is my privilege to welcome you all to the Naval Aviation panel featuring a cadet-moderated panel with 2 U.S. Navy company-grade officers. I'll now introduce our panelists and cadet moderator. Please hold your applause until all personnel are introduced. Lieutenant Sheridynn T. Ball Scheppers is an A-18 Super Hornet pilot with the Strike Fighter Squadron 32 Fighting Swordsmen at Naval Air Station Oceana, Virginia. Scheppers was born in Arizona and raised as a military brat. She has lived in Texas, South Korea, Alabama, Louisiana, Colorado, and Maryland. Inspired by her parents who graduated from the U.S. Air Force Academy in 1991, Scheppers followed in their Service Academy footsteps and graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 2019. In September 2019, Scheppers reported to Pensacola, Florida for introductory flight screening and aviation pre-flight indoctrination. After completing both in August 2020, she trained with the Training Squadron 27 world-famous boomers in Corpus Christi, Texas. Scheppers selected jets in May of 2021 and continued training with the Training Squadron 21 Red Hawks in in Texas. She earned her Wings of Gold in November of 2022 and reported to Strike Fighter Squadron 106, the Gladiators, in Virginia Beach, Virginia, for fleet replacement squadron training. In November 2023, Scheppers joined Strike Fighter Squadron 32 on deployment, participating in Operations Inherent Resolve and Prosperity Guardian. She has logged 593 flight hours, 146 combat hours, and 138 carrier-arrested landings. Lieutenant Rodney TROG Hill was commissioned through Officer Candidate School and serves as an F-18F Super Hornet Weapons Systems Officer with Strike Fighter Squadron 32. With more than 2 years in the squadron, Hill accumulated over 600 flight hours in the A-18F and successfully completed 126 carrier landings aboard the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. During his 9-month deployment in the Red Sea in support of Operation Prosperity Guardian, Hill played a critical role ensuring mission success, employing more than 15,000 pounds of ordnance on various missions. Notably, he successfully neutralized 3 Houthi rebel one-way attack drones using the AIM-9. Hill's skill, dedication, and leadership exemplified the commitments of today's naval aviators, ensuring mission success in defense of the U.S. and our allies. And finally, our moderator, Cadet 2nd Class Isabelle Bollier. Cadet Bollier and panelists, the floor is now yours.
All right. My first question I have is for both of you. Have you ever worked with Air Force personnel, and what are the biggest differences between Naval and Air Force flight lines, procedures, or training?
So while we were deployed in the Red Sea, I was lucky enough to go to the CAOC, which is the Combined Air Operations Center. There they have a lot of joint forces, i.e. The Air Force, Space Force, and a couple of other coalition forces. So there I was able to shake hands and also integrate with a lot of the Air Force assets out there. I would say the biggest difference is, not difference, but more of a similarity is the knowledgeability of the aircraft and your systems and how to apply them accurately. And then the biggest difference would be us landing on the carrier. Definitely.
Not much to add. I personally haven't really interacted or trained with the Air Force that much. So just with the carrier, I'd say, I think that one of your questions alludes to it further, but it's the closest that you're ever going to get to the American West, the Wild West. So kind of a lot of our stuff isn't as laid out, potentially.
Absolutely. All right. This one is for you, ma'am. So Lieutenant Scheppers, both your parents are USAFA graduates. What made you choose the Naval Academy and Naval Aviation?
Yeah, good question. So honestly, the answer really isn't that deep. I was not that deep as an 18-year-old when I was making these decisions. So when I was in high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I applied to the Air Force Academy and the Naval Academy, got into both, and figured, okay, I have to go to one of them. I really liked Annapolis, Maryland, and I liked the beach, so I picked the Naval Academy. At the Naval Academy, being a fighter jet pilot was never really my dream. I figured maybe I would go EOD. I do not like working out that much. Figured maybe I would go subs. I did not have the grades for it. And somehow I got a pilot slot, checked in for flight training. Figured I'd go helicopters. I had jet grades, put jets first, got it, and now I'm here. So kind of to this point, it was more of doors kept opening and I kept walking through them.
Lieutenant Hill, what was your first impression of the A-18F Super Hornet when you began training, and how did your role as a Wizzo evolve over time?
My first impression was it was a huge aircraft. We had been training in some of the smaller aircrafts like the T-6 and the T-45. So that was my first impression was, wow, this plane is big. My second impression was, dude, I don't know how to talk on the radio, right? I've been training this whole time and I still can't talk on the radio. My instructor is gonna kill me. After going through a couple of rough fan flights, we finally figured out how to accurately use the systems and talk on the radio. And as a Wizzo, my relationship with the aircraft has evolved. I think the ability to be a good Wizzo is the ability to, one, know your craft. So you're a weapon systems officer, so knowing the weapon systems is probably the biggest thing to hang your hat on. Second would be just the communications, i.e. the communications in the cockpit, out of the cockpit, et cetera, and then having that battle space knowledge and being able to provide enhancing essay to your pilot or your wingman at that.
Right. Now this is for both of you. What was your most memorable experience during training, and what lessons did you learn? Give you a little minute to think about it.
All right, I got a good story. During training, I think we were doing a tail chase. We were flying the T6s at the time, so I was with VT-10, which is a Wizzo training squadron. We were flying T6s. It was me and my buddy Puker. Wonder how you got that call sign. So yeah, we're flying around, raging around this tail chase, which is one of the best flights you can do in the T6, so everybody's looking forward to it. And he has gotten sick on every flight prior to, so normally he keeps a bag with him. However, this time he did not have one with him. Ended up blowing chunks all over the cockpit. Gross. And I think that would definitely be my favorite memory. He's been my buddy to this day. Still to this day we check in. He's still puker to this day.
So I was really trying to think of like a cool, funny story to tell y'all, but kind of, I guess, the realer thing would be how with 4 flights left in the entire syllabus, I failed like my 3rd flight. So if I had failed one more flight after this, I was essentially going to get attrited out of jet training with 4 flights left. So this is like less than a week left. That was very memorable, and I think it was memorable because, you know, you see movies like Captain Marvel, right, and like Top Gun with Phoenix, and it's like they fell and they get back up, right? Like I failed this flight, and I was like crying in my closet. Like my friend was trying to console, like be like, dude, you're fine, it's okay. So with that, what I really took and like gained and learned from that afterwards was just to persevere. Like your feelings are temporary. Something can seem like super bleak, but at the end of the day, everything is temporary. I obviously made it. I'm here right now, so just don't get caught up in the moment. Nothing is ever as serious as it seems, and just keep pushing.
Alrighty. The F-18 Super Hornet is an advanced and complex aircraft. What are some of its most interesting features or technologies that make it unique, and how do they help you in missions?
Try and think of how I can answer this on the unclass level.
That was my worry with asking this question, but I figured I'd throw it out there in case.
So I guess that this isn't super unique to the F-18, but something that I did not realize prior to becoming a fighter jet pilot is I think that my favorite part of the entire aircraft is the ejection seats. Ejection seats save lives. Those are Yeah, I did not realize this, but if you're like inverted at 500 feet, which is super low, you will still survive an ejection because it gets the swing of the chute. So I guess that's probably on the unclass level my favorite part of the F-18.
I'm gonna brag about our aircraft for a little bit here. Sorry, guys. So what makes the F-18 great, in my opinion, is the ability to successfully execute multiple mission sets, air to surface, air to ground. I think that sets us apart. Also, our ability for the slow speed flight, which is one asset that we have. That's not. All right, cool. Yep. All right, cool. Just had to double check, make sure I didn't say anything crazy. And then, yeah, I think those are the big ones I want to hit.
How does working on a carrier with the F-18 differ from land-based operations, and how do you mentally prepare for the carrier operations?
Yeah, so we were actually talking about this, I think, with you yesterday. I think that the flight deck was rated like the most dangerous working environment in like the it's crazy for multiple reasons, but the carrier and blue water operations is, I think, the closest in the modern day you can get to the Wild West, right? Like you are making something out of nothing. Every day that you are out there is just you. And how I prepared myself, I'm religious. I wouldn't say I'm like overly religious, but I'll tell you what, I had the rosary written on my kneeboard card. And on dark nights when it was 0% illumination, and I was really just praying to whoever was out there to like get me back safely, I was literally saying the rosary before I landed. So just caging your brain of recognizing it is incredibly dangerous and deserves respect, and yeah, it doesn't, just that.
I think T-Ball definitely hit on it. The carrier is one of the most dangerous places to work. But looking at it from an aerial view, watching everybody work on the flight deck, I think it's also a marvel of humanity and how teamwork can work to go at and execute these mission sets that we knock out.
Going with that, how do you handle the stress of performing under pressure, especially during critical moments when lives and national security are on the line?
Compartmentalization is the big thing. So focusing on the task at hand, kind of putting everything to the side. I think we kind of break the flight down into 3 portions: admin, TAC admin, and then mission conduct. So you kind of focus on admin, so taking off safely. Then you go out there, you set your weapon systems up. That's the TAC admin portion. And then you go out there and execute your mission set. While you're out there in your mission set, you're not thinking about anything else but executing the mission appropriately. And then once the mission is over, it's like, all right, cool, back to TAC admin. Let's go ahead and power down these weapon systems. And then back to admin, let's make sure that we land on the boat safely.
I would say additionally, I am a firm believer that how you do one thing is like how you do everything. So and you do not rise to the occasion, you fall to your training and your habits. So with that, training really hard, studying really hard, so that you do have the confidence in those moments to actually execute.
I think that's something we hear quite often, and we kind of just let it go and we don't think about it. So it's nice to hear that from somebody else, that it does matter.
Yeah, so they say that once you sit on an ejection seat, you lose 90% of your brain, and you're on like lizard brain, like brain stem power. So with that, there's no really time for higher level thinking or thought. You're just kind of falling to what you trained for, your habits that you built to that point.
What's one of the most unforgettable experiences that you've had deployed or flying or personally with or without your squadron?
I think one of the most unforgettable experiences I had, we were downtown Houthiville, me and Hot Wheels Kramer. So we were flying around. We were targeted into a ASCM launcher, air-to-surface cruise missiles, for those who are wondering what that means. So we get this targeting. We're like, all right, cool. We're going to drop a couple of GBU-38s on it. Those are JDAM air-to-surface munitions that we drop, GPS guided. So we set up the weapon systems and everything. Everything's looking good to go. We get in zone. She presses the pickle button, and then the weapon fails. So we get a hung and unlocked indication, which means the weapon didn't successfully come off the jet. Uh-oh. So instead of coming back around for another pass, which probably in hindsight would have been the better play, I used my wizard magic and reset up the weapon system, stuck to the next weapon, and then we're able to employ a half a mile later, or a mile and a half later, and take out the Aston launcher. So I think that was the best one.
Yeah, I'd say probably not the best part, but the most memorable part was I hit on it yesterday with like my talk with the first season, the freshmen. When I was with TROG, actually, we ended up flying through a fireball, and that was pretty scary for reasons. Yeah, we ended up flying through a fireball after we employed one of our missiles, and just after that, trying to like cage your brain of, oh my gosh, I have to land on the carrier and I can't mess up now. I still have to make it back home. That was pretty memorable.
That's when the compartmentalization comes in and the...
Exactly.
Perfect. Both of you have successfully completed over 100 carrier landings, which is an incredible feat within itself. Do you have a memory or a particularly challenging landing experience that stands out to you?
None for me. I just kind of sit in the back and watch. So not a whole lot.
So on ours, that night specifically, when we flew through the fireball, I think I said, like, my first thought, like, it was really funny if you listen to our tapes, because it's, like, silence for 10 seconds while we're waiting for something to happen. Then nothing happens. We're just like, oh, thank God, relief. And then as the sun came up, we saw the full extent of the damage, dirtiness to our canopy. And so it took me 4 attempts to land. And yeah, that was pretty memorable, because my thought was like, okay, you could not have done all of this stuff and then have to eject on the side of the carrier because you can't land this freaking plane. And so TROG's just like massaging my shoulders from the backseat, telling me how good I'm doing. So yeah, that was pretty memorable. And then obviously the super unique thing about naval aviation is that we have LSOs, or landing signals officers, which are just someone that's telling you how great you're doing and how, you know, they'll get you aboard. So they were telling me that, trying to calm me down. Eventually, I did get aboard.
Is that when you became like a professional hype man, is being in the back seat?
That's it right there.
What's the best piece of advice you've received from a mentor, a fellow aviator, or anyone throughout your career that you can share with us?
I would say the best piece of advice or quote that I got actually came from my track coach back in high school when my knees were still good. Coach Jackson, I want to speak his name because he's a great man. And the reason that I chose the fraternity that I did, Phi Beta Sigma. All right, whatever. Cool. So we're doing the whole rigmarole out there, running laps. I'm tired. Everybody's tired. And he's looking at me for, like, to be the leader. And he tells me a true leader is not judged by the merits of his own, but by the uplifting that he does around the people around him, you know? And I think those words have stuck to me. So cool, it's great. We can achieve all of these great things, but the thing that matters and what separates a true leader from the regular Joe Smo is the people around him and how successful they are.
Which we were talking about this last night, how we're always competing here and how sometimes you lose that bigger picture of it's not just you, you're also trying to better the people around you.
Exactly.
I would say that this wasn't really from a mentor, but my friends and I, as I alluded to, flight school was incredibly difficult for me, but it was not a unique experience by any means. I'd say that everyone reaches a point one way or another sooner rather than later where they question whether or not they deserve to be there, they have what it takes to, you know, be there. And with that, that's kind of when imposter syndrome comes in, and if you've been lucky enough to not experience it before, it's this feeling of fear that you are eventually going to be caught or revealed for, you know, not being good enough to be there, not being, that you're eventually gonna get caught. And a lot of my friends experienced this, and we kind of came up with a mantra to tell each other when we were having these negative thoughts, and I still tell myself that today, and we still tell each other that today, and it's this. So, no one feels bad for you. You did not somehow, I'll use the Air Force Academy as an example for cadets if you're feeling this way. The Air Force Academy is not a charity organization geared at getting you across the finish line. The Department of Defense has invested way too much money in all of y'all, way too much money into the admissions process to allow you to get across the finish line. All of the people that write your evaluations, that sign your report cards, don't feel bad for you. Their loyalty is not to you, it's to the American people. So that's the first one. The second one is that you are not smart enough to have somehow tricked people into thinking that you are good enough to make it past this point. Like you're not cunning enough, you're not spy, you're not devious enough to do that. And the final wicket of it is you are not special. So you are not special enough to have slipped through the cracks to make it to this point. So if all of that is true, then it stands that you do deserve to be here. You are good enough. And yeah, just that. And you are good enough. And so my friends and I, even to this day, still tell each other that.
Dude, I'm going to definitely take that one, T-Ball.
So this is my last question. You can answer this as much as you would like. But if I may ask, how did you earn your call sign, or if you have any funny stories behind it? I know we talked a little bit about it last night. If you want to share, it's up to you how much.
Yeah, so I'll take the first one. So with that, we have this thing in naval aviation called Pri-A, which means you meet your squadron on deployment. So immediately after a carrier qualified in the F-18, so like I land on the carrier for the first time in the F-18, they were like, congratulations, Lieutenant Scheppers, your squadron's VFA 32, they're off the coast of Iran. And I was like, great. And then a week later, I was on a plane out to Bahrain and subsequently on the aircraft carrier. So I was landing at night, and I hook skip boltered my first 2 times, which means that my whole landing was perfect, but that like my hook didn't catch the wire, it jumped over them. And my 3rd time, they were like, okay, if you don't catch the wire this time, you have to tank. And I tanked like 1 time at night prior to this, and I was like, wow, that would really suck. I really don't want to do that. And so I'm coming into land, and I look at the runway environment, or like the carrier environment, and so our scan for it is ball, which tells you where you are on glide slope, so how high or low you are, and then T, which is line up. And to keep my scan moving, I audibly said, ball, T, and that's it. I'm sorry, it's not that great of a story. That's TROG's is probably better. That's why I saved his for last. I actually don't know the story of how you got your call sign.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a great story. It's a great story. So here I was, just a young man, and you guys get nothing. No beer, no story. I will leave you with this. Why do it once when you could do it twice?
Lieutenant Scheppers, Lieutenant Hill, and Cadet Bollier, thank you for your discussion today. At this time, I would like to open the floor for questions. Attendees can ask questions at the microphones positioned in the audience.
Lieutenant Scheffler, Ron Oles, class of 1969, Air Force Academy. I enjoyed our dinner together last night. But I look at all these young people, and a number of them are going to get married a day or 2 after graduation. I'm sure there are a few. I'd like you to share your story. Nobody here probably knows other than your parents, and you shared with me last night. She's married to a Navy SEAL who's on deployment right now. So how do you and your husband manage a family relationship, being married, with all the deployments you are both going to face? So I think a lot of these young people could use your advice. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So the first piece of advice that I would give you all, I understand that in order to get co-location, some of you all do need to get married like immediately after graduation to secure that. But I would say hold off as long as possible, if it is possible, because when you are dating, it is a decision every day. When you are dating in long distance, it is a decision every single day to stay with the person because it's easier to leave. Vice, if you are married to that person, you have to make the decision to leave that person. It's easier to stay together. So I think that in us delaying getting married, because we were in the same, we met when we were freshmen, we were in the same company at the academy. We stay in the same company all 4 years, so we had to leave it for me. But when in making the decision to remain dating instead of getting married, it really solidified that we wanted to be together because it would have been significantly easier to separate. So then with that, when we did get married, how we kind of make it work right now, despite us like literally never seeing each other, I just go back to the reasons why I fell in love with him, and he goes back to the reasons why he fell in love with me. And then I'm a big fan of just remembering that everything is temporary and life is incredibly short, even these moments. So the moments that we're not together, this is temporary. The feelings that I have of missing him are temporary. Thank you.
Hello, I'm a cadet second class Kovacs in Squadron 16. Sir, this is a question for you. Can you talk a little more to the pipeline for NFO and what that's like?
Yep, so a little bit about my story. I was a Tuskegee graduate, so I commissioned through OCS. The reason that I went WIZO or NFO when I got the contract was just because I didn't have the eyes for pilot. But now that I am a WIZO, I didn't know how rewarding of a job it would be until I got into the platform. When it comes to the pipeline and everything, you go through whatever route you commission. All roads lead to Pensacola. That's naval aviation, period. And I believe some of the Air Force backseaters go through Pensacola as well. So, yep, you train in Pensacola. You go through API, which might be called something different now. During that, you do knife, where you get like initial flight training. So you get about 10 flights in like a small boy, like a Cessna or a Piper Warrior or whatever. After that, you go through a little bit of schooling. They teach you aerodynamics, which you probably already know a little bit about, and then weather, et cetera, et cetera. So once you pass the textbook classes, now it's time to get you in the jet. So after the textbook classes, then you get your flight suit as a reward. We have a big shindig called Flight Suit Friday. I think you guys have Flight Suit Friday. Not anymore. Sorry to bring that up. Sorry. Yeah. But yeah, so you get your Flight Suit Friday, which is a big hoorah, and now it's time to go get your wings. So you try, initially you fly in the T6 with VT10, who are the Wildcats, and that's, every WIZO goes through VT10. So once you go through VT10, now it's time to select your next platform. So you're either going big wings or you're going fighters. So that's the choice that you have to make. If you go fighters, then your next duty station is going to be VT-45, which is going to be flying VT-86, excuse me, where you'll be flying the T-45, or you go to the P-8 platform. I don't remember their training squadron. Sorry, whatever, guys. We love them. But yep, after that, you get your wings of gold, and then you go to your FRS. So you either go to 106 or you go to 122, and then if you get selected for growlers, then you go to Whidbey Island. 106 is the East Coast Squadron. I'm going to be going back there for the instructor next billet for my next deployment, thank God, which is really nice. I'm excited about that. So there, you meet your pilots. That's really when the integration kind of starts, pilots and WIZOs, where we kind of link up platform-wise. And then you're deployed to your sea duty tour. After that, the word is your oyster. Does that answer your question?
Thanks a lot. Are you guys going to be at HAPS later for more serious
dude.
questions? Awesome.
Holler at me.
See you there.
Big time, big time.
Cadet 4th Class Sterling, Cadet Squadron 3, Cry Havoc. Lieutenant Hill, what event in track did you run, and how do you feel being an athlete prepared you to be an officer in the Navy?
In track, I was, not to brag, Mr. Do-It-All. I ran the 400, the 800, 16, the 4x1, 4x4. I did the long jump, triple jump, high jump until my knees started hurting, and ran the 200 for a little bit, but yeah, whatever. The 400 was where I made my money, and the 4x4. Those are my races. Those are the ones I went to state in. When it comes to track and basketball and football and just playing sports in general, I think it prepares you to be a teammate. A teammate is the biggest thing that you can be when you're out deployed on a squadron. You kind of forget about yourself a little bit and, like I said, your own accolades, and it's all about making sure that the team reaches their goal. You kind of put your ego to the side and make sure that everybody is doing what they need to do. Does Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yeah, man. Who's next?
CC Gallet, Prep School Charlie Squadron. So I've got my PPL and I have just under 100 hours. And this is a question for both of you guys. What I get kind of nervous of is having bad habits when I'm flying. Could you list a couple mental or just overall bad habits that pilots will get during pilot training? How can we avoid those?
Oh, here we go. I think that the biggest thing that you need to separate is you as a person versus you as a pilot, because you will have bad flights. That's case in point. You will have bad flights, you will have a bad landing, you'll have, bad. And if you do not separate who you are as a person versus what you do, which is being a pilot or flying a plane, it will eat you alive. You will be unable to take feedback because, you don't want to think that you're a bad person, right? But if you conflate the two, you're going to think that if someone gives you feedback. So you're not going to be able to take feedback. And then additionally, it'll eat you alive. And you'll begin to not like it anymore, because if there is something, when there is something that you struggle with, you will start resenting flying and hating it. So a universal lesson, regardless of what platform you end up flying or continue to fly, I would say separate who you are as a person versus what you do as a pilot.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Oliver Harmon, and I'm a civilian. And
Nice.
my question is, who gets credit for an air-to-air kill? The person in the front seat or the person in the back seat?
Both.
I don't even know if we're counting these as air-to-air kills, truthfully. Air-to-drone kill?
Yep. Air-to-drone, nice.
Air-to-flying lawnmower kill? I don't,
I would say the pilot gets majority of the credit just because they're the ones pulling the trigger, in my opinion. Wizzos, our whole deal is to enhance the SA and make sure that the pilot knows exactly what's going on, as well as everybody around us knows exactly what's going on. So I would say they get the kill. We just kind of get the good job boy, the attaboy, as they call it. But yeah, I mean, even in our instance when we shot down the 3 drones, my whole thing was all right, cool, let me get this FLIR on the drone so that we can identify this and make sure that we're shooting a drone and not shooting down our wingman or something like that. T-Ball, you got anything else there on that?
No.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Okay, those are very good questions, okay? In Southeast Asia, when we would have an air-to-air kill, if it was an F-4, which is a 2-place airplane, both the guy, the pilot and the Wizzo or the Rio for the Navy would get credit for that kill, okay? As far as I know, that is still our policy. However, those things are being adjudicated as we speak because, as you realize, in some of the engagements we've had in the last few months in the skies around Israel, there's been a whole shit pot full of air-to-air kills. Those were not necessarily airplanes. So the question is being asked, how about these other devices now that we have to intercept, which are just as dangerous? Cruise missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, UAVs and everything. And all of that is being looked at and considered, and they're trying to figure out what the scores will be. We may have several aces coming out of these most recent events, but it's all being looked at. And I will remind you, you cadets, if you remember your Air Force history, one of our first aces was Frank Luke. What did he shoot down? Balloons. I rest my case.
No, thank you for answering that, sir. I feel like we never got to the point of even... I feel like that we're still debating the semantics over it, that we didn't even get to the point of who would get credit for it. So thank you for that, sir.
Good morning. My name is C4C Livingston from CS40. This is a question for both of y'all. What was your genuine reaction when Top Gun Maverick came out?
Hype. Dude, I think as a squadron, we went and watched the movie in theaters. So it was a lot of hoopla around it. And obviously, we love Top Gun. Tom Cruise is the man. don't you say a bad word about Tom Cruise, I swear to God.
Yeah, I'd say with me, this was, so the timeline when it came out was when I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna fail out of flight school. I'm never gonna be a jet pilot. And then I see like Phoenix, right? And I remember my mother-in-law got me the Top Gun Barbie, and she was like, oh my God, it looks like you. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's literally never gonna be me. So I feel like I watched it, and then I never really like appreciated it. I never really enjoyed it, because in my head, I like convinced myself that if I watched it more than once or like multiple times, then I wasn't gonna be able to become a jet pilot. So it wasn't until recently that I feel like I actually liked it and appreciated it.
Thank y'all both.
Thank you.
Morning, my name is C4C Tito out of Squadron 22. My question is for you guys is, what's the pilot culture and Wizzo culture like in the Navy?
I'd say like very bro down. We're very familiar with each other because we have such a close living proximity with each other. We literally live on top of each other, one might say. So you're seeing these guys day in and day out, which is why I think call signs were invented, because you want to take the formality out of kind of the interactions, the day-to-day interactions. I mean, you sit down, eat lunch, dinner, watch movies with these guys all the time. You're flying with these guys. You're risking your life with these guys. So yeah, man, I would say we're definitely very close with one another. Got anything else to add?
No, not really. I was trying to think of something else to say. It's almost like when you're on deployment, you're actually around these people like 24/7. There's no escape. So I feel like you develop more of a sibling relationship where you really start to like really like some people and then you hate other people. But like you all have to be a team at the end of the day. So, but it's awesome.
Thank you.
Cadet 4th Class Wicker, Detachment 825, University of Texas at Austin, Hook'em Horns. Sir, this is a question for you. You mentioned you commissioned through OTS, so you didn't necessarily have the military training or whatnot in college. What skills or other lessons did you learn in college that you think transferred really well into the Navy?
OCS, by the way, not OTS. It's a big difference, big difference. We get crushed a lot more than the guys at OTS, no offense. But yeah, I would say the things that translated, kind of like we alluded to a little bit earlier, would be the teamwork aspect. So the things that I kind of picked up in like collegiate sports and just sports in general. So the teamwork aspect, as well as the hard work. People don't speak to it enough, but it's a grindstone, and you're putting your nose to it. I think you guys can also attest to how long the days can be, and how short the nights can be. You know. Long days, sleepless nights, staying up late. I think all of that goes through college, and I applied all of that into the Navy. I think the work ethic is the big thing, and then the teamwork.
Thank you, sir.
C4C Needham, Cadet Squadron 24. Question for both of you. In the pilot world, I understand that that's a little different as officers than maybe an intel officer. How, as pilots in Wizzo, do you lead? Are you like the officer aspect of that?
Yeah, so I think that this might be the biggest difference between Air Force and Navy. I know that the Air Force has kind of gone back and forth on how that looks like with them, but in the Navy with us, our maintenance is the same as, our maintenance squadron is in the same squadron as us. So TROG was the line division officer and I was the line branch officer. And so what that looks like is the people who are working on our jets, we're actually like interacting with them and working with them in charge of their well-being, livelihood, signing their leave chits, that kind of thing. Do you want to expand on it?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, the integration part, with us being more involved, I wouldn't say more involved, excuse me, but just as involved as we can be with our sailors there. We're going downstairs, we're managing their quals, we're making sure that they are living good lives, healthy lives, making sure their personal life is squared away, et cetera, et cetera. So I would think that would be the officer side of the aviation house, would be that kind of leadership and involvement.
Yeah, and I'll kind of expand too. I'm sure that this is universal with Air Force aviation as well, but there is so much implicit trust that we must have in our maintainers, which are the sailors and are the people that we lead, the decisions that they make or don't make, I know this is going to sound dramatic, but like quite literally affect whether or not we live or die. Like when we were flying off the carrier, one of our, it was just this random 19-year-old sailor caught something in the jets that quite literally was the difference between whether or not when this crew launched off the catapult, they were going to go directly into the water or they weren't. So with that, a big thing, I wouldn't say like a leadership challenge, but a big thing that we really try to do is get them to have buy-in. And how you do that is if you buy into your people, they will buy into the mission. And I think that that's been one of the easiest things of buying into the people. TROG is amazing at this. All of our sailors love him. He does so many re-enlistments. But if you buy into your people, everything else falls into place. They will buy into mission. They will do kind of what you need them to do. And then I think that the biggest challenge with us too is getting them the tools that they need to succeed. I'm a firm believer that people want to do their job and they want to do it well, and the reason why they don't is because they don't have the tools that they need to succeed.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you both.
Lieutenant Colonel Barbie, I am a flight nurse by trade, chief nurse out at the formal training unit for all of our flight nurses and air medical evacuation technicians. I've been trying to think of how to phrase this question just as a medical professional, but the moral maybe injury that you guys try to prevent, how do you mentally, emotionally prepare for you're dropping bombs and there may be civilian casualties, there may be unintended consequences. So how do you guys, mentally prepare for that pre and post? What do you guys do?
For me, I'm a big Southern guy. I come from my grandfather was a pastor. My dad's a pastor now. So the church has been very involved in my life, not to get too preachy. So the first time I went downtown to Hootieville, I was shell-shocked. My stomach was curling because I knew what I had just done, So there was like a nice moral dilemma that I was dealing with there. I talked to my father about it. And after a little bit of counseling from him and the best advice he gave me was get back in the book. Get back in the book. So I realized what I was doing it for. And then I would tell myself, hey, you're not just going out there and taking lives, you're going out there and saving lives. You're doing this for the people back home who can't protect themselves. You're going out there and protecting your family, and I have 2 children, so you're protecting them, your wife. So preaching that to myself every morning, getting up, like, yo, today you're going to go out there and you're going to protect Lex. You're going to protect Trip. You're going to protect Riley. That's the way that I kind of got through that dilemma that I was experiencing.
Yeah, I think kind of similarly, someone kind of so my cousin's wife asked me kind of like a similar question, and I had a similar answer with it to think like, if someone were to try and like kill my dog, right, I would probably like rip their throat out with my bare hands. That like wouldn't even cross my mind, and I wouldn't really care about it after the fact. And these people are trying to like kill us, right? Take out, referred to it, the drones that they were sending at the carrier were not for community service. They were for the intention of killing sailors on the flight deck. That was what they were for, case in point. The Houthis did not take down a single ship or influence anything at all happening in the Israel thing. The only people that they killed were innocent sailors that had nothing to do with anything, so they were not good people. So with that, it was not pretty easy, but pretty simple to rationalize in our heads what we were doing and everything else. And furthermore, the targets that we were hitting and everything with, like that, they had to be vetted so heavily by the CAOC, so the Air Force. So with all of that, we were pretty confident that we weren't just, I was pretty confident, at least when I got a target, that I wasn't going to be like accidentally slinging a bomb into a school or something.
Great answers, thank you.
Can you hear that? I just wanted to address Lieutenant Hill's comment, the question about teamwork, differences between the pilot. I was an F4 Wizzo, so I've been in your seat, and I was always aware I go in 6 feet behind the pilot. if they do something wrong. But we sat alert together, and we're a crew, we're a team, and I think it's important for all of these young people. I don't care what position you're at in an aircraft, you're a team. You function together, you have your responsibilities, but again, I was always aware. I can tell you, my piece of advice, never get complacent as a Wizzo. I had 2 pilots try to kill me. So you're a team, you work together, you perform together, you live together. I mean, you're married as a combat crew. So in my experience, whether you were a Wizzo, whether you were the aircraft commander, you were one. So thank you both for what you're doing. We're proud of you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
and I'll
sir.
expand on that even further. It does. Yeah. And I'll expand on that even further, right? Because I remember I got back after like our crazy morning, and I was talking like our desk chief, so like the chief that's in charge of, you know, making sure that the jets can actually fly. She was like, "That's so sick that like, you know, you guys did this." And I was like, "This is just as much your accomplishment as this is mine." Like, I might be the one pulling the trigger, but I am the last person on just a long line of people that have got to this point. It was just as much the desk chief that signed off on the jet to make sure that there was gas in it. The person, the 18-year-old who loaded ordnance onto the jet. Everyone, it was not just us. We were just the last people in the kill chain.
Any more questions?
Any further questions?
We talked about this a little last night, and I think it was some good advice you gave me of how has your mentality changed, obviously with your beautiful family back home, from when you first became an officer to now?
For me, I was definitely guns-ho when I first joined the Navy. Throwing caution to the wind, definitely willing to take any and every risk to kind of execute the mission. So whatever was called upon to do, I was down to do it. Now, I would say I would be a little more cautious with my life in that aspect. But yeah, the compartmentalization got a little bit more difficult because the tickle in the back of your mind, like, oh man, I gotta make sure that I make it back home to my family, is always looming back there. So it was a little bit more challenging, I would think, as the years have progressed. But still, the compartmentalization is the key there.
Yeah, I would say with me, it was actually my husband who his mentor gave him this advice when he was trying to figure out what he was going to do next. And they said, you made a lifelong commitment to your wife. You did not make a lifelong commitment to the Navy. At the end of the day, the Air Force will just be a fraction of your life. Even if you do a whole 20 years after you finish and make it a whole career, you will still be out of the Air Force by your mid-40s, and you still have half of your life to live. So kind of with that, how my mindset changed with that is that I still really enjoy the Navy. I try my best. I really do. But at the end of the day, my husband, I made a lifelong commitment to my husband, and he's going to be there for me after all of this, not the Navy.
Panelists, on behalf of the United States Air Force Academy and the National Character and Leadership Symposium, we'd like to thank you for joining us today with these coins. This concludes the Naval Aviation panel. We'd like to take a moment to invite all of you to rate this session in the NCLS app. We also invite you to visit our 360 photo booth on the south side of Arnold Hall and to provide feedback on your NCLS experience. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day at NCLS 2025.